Trevor Lawrence is now, what is he, tied for the highest paid
Yep, he's
quarterback?
right there with Burrow.
Yeah, him and Burrow. And it's interesting because there is a line of thought I've heard that he's only getting paid this amount of money because he is in Jacksonville. And then they give the example of Daniel Jones versus Trevor Lawrence's statistics.
Yeah, I don't know if that's real fair.
Well, Daniel Jones, if you want to know, completion percentage over the course of his career is 64%. Lawrence is 63%. He's got more TDs than Lawrence. He's got a better, he's got some better statistics, or the same. Basically, Daniel Jones and Trevor Lawrence statistically are about equal. If you go just by statistics,
right.
They both played in a playoff game. Is Trevor Lawrence getting this contract because he's in Jacksonville? If he was playing in New York, would he have gotten this contract?
No, I don't think that's why. I mean, I think he's getting this contract because of what he can be still. And because I think there's an acknowledgement that he's been through a lot in his first 3 years. The Urban Meyer year was obviously a complete dumpster fire. Last year, a bunch of things went wrong. But the year in between, he looked really good. And I don't know that Daniel Jones has had moments like the playoff game that Trevor Lawrence had against the Chargers. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Where it's just like, yes, that's who we think he's going to be. And so, I had no point watching Daniel Jones thought, this guy can be a top 5 quarterback in the league. I think watching Trevor Lawrence, you have gotten those flashes. Now, they haven't been anywhere near consistent enough, but we have at least gotten those flashes. And he has won a playoff game in Jacksonville, which is not the easiest thing to do. And I know Blake Bortles did it, 6-7 years ago, but not like the most common thing in the world. And I think in this case, you're paying for what you think he's going to become.
And that's where
and you're doing it 2 years early, too, which helps.
Then that's where the contracts are going. That's what quarterbacks, it's the evolution of the contracts that have been given out before him anyway, right?
And now, that's the thing is, now who's the real winner?
Well, that's
the real
the
winner
thing. Dak Prescott is the real winner.
Dak Prescott, Jordan Love, Tua Tagovailoa.
But Dak really should be the next guy up, and it gets back to what I said before the break. Jerry Jones, and we talked about this the last week when you were here. He has 3 massive contracts that he has to do, and every minute he waits, he loses more money.
And they keep stepping on that rake, and it's happened before to them, where it happened to them with DeMarcus Lawrence, it happened to them with Zach Martin, it happened to them the last time with Dak Prescott, where they had to pay more. And I sort of think, I think they're going to pay CD. I think they're going to pay Micah. I don't think those guys are going anywhere. Dak, to me, is a little more interesting. And I'm starting to wonder, are they right now where the Rams were with Jared Goff going into 2020, where things could go either way? Now, that doesn't mean he's going to be gone after this year, because part of Jared Goff being gone is Matthew Stafford fell out of the sky. You know what I mean? So you don't know if that type of opportunity is going to present itself. Also, what if Dak Prescott does not what Jared Goff did in that last year, but what Joe Flacco did in his last year in Baltimore?
Dak, he just led the NFL in touchdown passes last year. I mean, he could have a slightly off year from that and still be worth $60 million.
And that's the whole thing about the Cowboys is that's the thing about Parcells said that thing about Dallas being the NFL's main stage, right? Everybody else is a lounge act, and the Cowboys are the main stage for the NFL. Think about this, how many coaches win 12 games 3 years in a row and are basically talked about they're on the maybe they shouldn't have a job anymore?
Right. Yeah.
Mike McCarthy's won 12 games 3 years in a row. So all of that, I think all of that, we're talking about degrees, and Mike McCarthy and Dak Prescott have done a pretty good job together over the last 3 years. Yet there's the championship drought. And this is the most amazing number. So they have, since 2007, I looked this up. Since 2007, they are the 6th winningest team in the NFL, right? 6th winningest team in the NFL. Yet they have the 4th longest championship game drought in the league. So they're not bad. They're in fact, they're really good. They're one of the winningest teams of the last 2 decades. And yet like the only teams that have longer championship game droughts than them are the Lions are off that list now.
Mm-hmm.
It's the Commanders, the Dolphins, and who am I missing? The Commanders, the Dolphins, and one other. And if you want to count the Browns, which it's not even the same franchise. You know what I mean? Like we're counting that long as because the Browns became the Ravens. You know, so it's a weird thing where they've been really good, but they haven't put it over the top. And you know, I think that's what creates things like, and of course, the stage that they're on too.
All right. What did people think of the whole Brady situation?
What did you think of the whole Brady situation?
I thought it was boring, but it wasn't for me. It was for, people to get nostalgic about a great time in their lives.
Yep.
And I thought it was too long, but again, it wasn't for me. And I thought it was weird timing.
I thought it was too. I thought if you put it together, the timing was just 6-12, whatever.
But the timing to give Bill Belichick a 5-minute, 2-minute, whatever standing ovation, and
well, see, I think that was a result of the dynasty.
Yeah, I know, but that you just fired him, like that You're bringing a guy back that you just fired for like a historical remembrance trip down memory lane, and it's like, well, you just fired him. Well, he was in the building 2 months ago.
What are you going to do? Not invite Bill Belichick to Brady night?
No, maybe not have Brady night this offseason. Have Brady night next offseason. And
I think that's the whole thing we've talked about letting things breathe, right? Like, which is why The Last Dance was better than the Dynasty. The Last Dance was good because everybody had 30 years to let it breathe. In fact, I think like if you watch the Dynasty, I think I've said this to you guys before. The guy who I thought was best in the Dynasty was Drew Bledsoe, and why? Because he's had 20 years personally.
It's the furthest removed from
he hasn't like lived in this in forever. So he's had time to let it breathe. He can make fun of himself now. You know what I mean? Like it's not eating him alive the way it is for some of these guys still. So I think that very clearly is an issue, is that these things haven't had enough time to breathe. I think the region very clearly sent a message to Belichick, which was, we have your back. And I thought about this a lot, like with the Kraft thing. Like, what'd you guys think of the reception he got?
It wasn't. I mean, it was striking how much different it was from what Belichick got.
I don't get why so many of these owners are so needy for that sort of thing, and that to me is why. This is going to sound weird. That to me is why, like, maybe my favorite owner in the NFL, and I personally, I don't really know him that well at all, but my favorite owner in the NFL might be Steve Bisciotti with the Ravens. How much do you guys know about him?
Not a lot. All I remember from Steve Bisciotti is after they won their last championship, him hugging Ray Lewis from behind like they were boyfriend and girlfriend.
So
it was weird.
Steve Bisciotti does not care about getting credit. You never hear from him. He thinks like all of the politicking that goes on at the owners' meetings is a bunch of BS. He barely shows up to that stuff. He bankrolls everything, so they're really well funded, but he stays out of everything, right? Like, so, like, he to me is like the guy who gets it the best. He's the guy. He completely says, "I want to know why you're doing it. I like if things go wrong, I need an explanation, and I'll be here. But I'm going to treat this the way I would one of my other business. You guys do the job."
He kind of looks like he had a pretty good life. Like if you're Robert Kraft and you're like whatever, and you grew up in the region and maybe you weren't the coolest guy in the world, and then you buy a team and you have all this success, you got to think, this is my theory with John Henry, is that when John Henry bought the team, he's like, if we win a World Series, can you imagine? He's fantasizing about it. If we win a World Series, can you imagine what it's going to be like?
What a hero I'm going to be.
We're going to be heroes. And then he wins 3 and everyone craps on him. So he's like, you guys, your expectations are out of control. Screw you. I think the reason that these guys buy the teams is because they want to be adored. This is the way that they're going to be adored. They've achieved all they can financially. They've realized that runs out, and there's only so much that can be gleaned.
No one roots for owners.
But there's only so much happiness that can be gleaned from earning all that money. So now they want public adulation, and then they realize that that's fleeting too. It's got to be like and so you just keep having these events to put yourself in front of a bunch of people, hoping that you'll get that rush again.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's interesting because, like I don't think, I mean, it's that whole thing we talked about with their legacy and how fickle the legacy of the owner is. You know what I mean? Like, and I mentioned to you guys that thing with Jerry and that thing with DeBartolo, right? Like, what people remember about DeBartolo isn't the championships. And when I was a kid, you guys remember this? Like,
Yeah, he was the best.
he was the gold standard, right?
Right,
Like,
yeah.
he was the gold standard. And yet, what most people remember him for now is like that riverboat like scandal in Louisiana, right?
Yeah.
Jerry, what most people think of with Jerry, despite having made the Cowboys the most valuable sports franchise on the planet and winning 3 championships, what everyone remembers him for is screwing up that dynasty and the breakup with Jimmy.
Right.
It's just, I just feel like with a lot of these guys, if you get into it for that, to be a celebrity, to be adored, like Fred said, like, that's just not what that position is.
No, you're always the billionaire owner, and you're always separate from us.
If you like that clip, and how could you not? Check out more videos from Toucher and Hardy here. Point slightly up and to the left. For more Patriots analysis and opinion, hit this playlist. Point slightly down and to the left. And for the latest from the Sports Hub, download at 985thesportshub.com.